Okie dokie. Right. So I will share my screen and feel free to just chime in at any point if I'm being unclear or you just have a suggestion or anything like that. Okay. Play slideshow. There we go. Got the date wrong. It's the 28th today, isn't it? Yeah, it's because I was.
I like that. I like the tech. That's very nice.
Yeah, there you go. But apart from that, great. So here's the agenda. It's a pretty straightforward one. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the Alliance itself. Obviously, we have already in the past, but I think this video is also going to hopefully serve as a resource for any future volunteers that might come along as well. So it'll probably be worth doing a refresher. Then the actual process that we have at the moment, which is certainly open to change and improve, but we do have a 3-step process currently in place for any banks or credit unions wishing to join. And then getting into the meat of it, which is the actual process for reaching out to these guys and engaging with them. Again, it is very much a work in progress. It's kind of a unique type of initiative that we're engaging with. It is a sales exercise we'll be doing, although we're not actually asking for any money. But so I've putting forward what I have some background in sales a little bit, and putting forward what I sort of suggest we begin with, but always very open to improving. And I'm sure there's going to be tons of ways that we can improve it. So I'm excited to hear from you guys once we've kicked off what we might be able to do that. Okay, so the Alliance itself, as you guys already know, is a group of, well, at the moment, I think it's 11 or 12 strong of banks and credit unions who've all gone on record and self-certified that they have no part in providing any financial support to the fossil fuel industry. It is a self-certification for now, because we don't have like a team of auditors or anything, but we think that there's still a lot of value in that, and that banks, while they can be very deceptive, don't tend to outright lie about too much just because of the reputational risk. And so even if 1 in 10 of them were to have done that while self-certifying with us, then we still feel if we have 9 who are honest actors, who managed to draw in a lot of new customers because of this initiative, then it would still have been worth the effort. So the Alliance, we've discussed potentially having networking events or things like that, with other sustainability leaders within the industry. But that's kind of a little bit down the line. We first want to kind of swell the numbers a little bit. And other than that, there's not much that they need to do other than sort of signing up with us and putting the seal on their website, and then potentially coordinating various marketing pushes and things like that. And the overall aim, I'm going to get into the more specific benefits in a moment, but is to kind of provide like a guiding star for the banking industry towards in the direction towards it should be heading. And we feel there's a lot of value in numbers, right? The more banks and credit unions we can get to join this, the more it's a sort of sign to the rest of the industry that this is the way things are headed and the way people should be thinking. Also from a risk standpoint, because fossil fuels are becoming a much riskier investment for most banks. So that's kind of the overall aim. There's about 6,000 FDIC insured banks in the US. So we could set some goals at some point, but if we could even get 5 to 10% of them to sign up to this Alliance, I think that would be an enormous achievement. At the moment we're a little bit below that, but it's good.
Does that number include credit unions?
I think it does. Yeah, I'll have to double check, but I think it does. But yes, so we can get into kind of the goal setting side once we've kicked off and seen what kind of traction we're getting, that sort of thing. So to speak more specifically about why we're doing this, so it aligns with the vision of Bank Green to move as much money as possible away from fossil fuel companies and towards building a sustainable future. And it does that, via general kind of awareness raising and, letting people know that this issue of fossil finance is something they should take seriously. And one of the ways we can do that is by building out the Bank Green website, right? So it already receives about 5,000 visits a month, which for this kind of a website is not insignificant. And we have this section here where we list all of the sustainable banks. At the moment, it just has 3. And then we link to Bank for Good, which we don't want to keep doing, as great as they are. So we already have plans to really improve this section. We have the budget for it. And there's a lot of people landing on this page looking for somewhere more sustainable to put their money. And building the alliance will allow us to kind of scratch our own itch and identify those banks that can go into this section. And then thirdly, I already touched on this, but by building this alliance, by getting publicity around every milestone we achieve, we're in the process raising general awareness around fossil finance, and getting people to realize there's this other very simple action that they can take that will also get them to start to adjust their self-image a little bit and start to think of themselves more as climate conscious consumers and citizens and so on. And when we launched, we had this pinned post on Twitter that I may have sent you already. And we just see there's a lot of demand for this. It seems, and not only that, but consumers, when they see this exists, they start to ask their own banks if they're a member. And they say, if you're not, why not? Can you join, sort of thing.
Zach, would you rather any questions or thoughts wait till the end, or do you want us to?
No, you can jump right in, or maybe wait until I finish that point on the slide or whatever, and then
sure.
And then jump in. So yeah, this was just to kind of show that this, there does appear to be a lot of demand amongst other activist organizations, campaign groups, but also about the average consumer. So this is super cool. Nationwide, would you consider joining, et cetera, et cetera. Go ahead, Judy.
It just seems that one of the benefits is also to provide people with a viable, and of course there are viable alternatives, maybe I should say a convenient, comforting alternative to the big, well, not just big, but to banks that are not in the alliance, or to the big dirty banks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That there's all of this effort to try to have customer campaigns to protest the actions of these big banks. But at least in New York, we don't have good physical bank alternatives at this time. So it offers the possibility of changing from your dirty bank to something you might be comfortable with if we have these alternatives.
Absolutely. I was trying to drive that point on the second one, right? So if the more we build out the list of options on the website, the easier it will become for people to switch, right? Because there was a focus group that someone conducted a year or two ago on this topic about what are the barriers to switching. And one of the main ones is, I don't know what the options are. I don't know which are the good ones. And there are very few. There's a couple of blog articles that list, the top 3 or 4 obvious sustainable banks in the US. But other than that, there isn't any comprehensive resource that I've come across. I think Bank for Good would probably be the closest one, and they have about 30 of lists of banks nationwide, and actually globally. We do want this to be global, but right now we're focusing on the US, that can help people to make that switch from one of the bigger banks. Yeah, so you're absolutely right. So that's kind of the internal benefits to us.
I have another question real quick, Zach, sorry.
Yeah, of course.
So one of the things that you talked about was building awareness. Are you measuring that in any way?
Not at the moment, no. We well, in the sense that we measure pledges to switch, right? So we've had over 1,000 in the last few months, and we know roughly 20% of them confirm that they actually switch. We know there's far more switches that have taken place aside from that. Awareness itself, we haven't done any survey taking or anything like that, just because we're still relatively small. So the only way we could really measure it is by kind of monitoring social media and things like that. And we do keep track of that, but it's quite hard to kind of quantify, I suppose.
Okay. And what about, do the banks share any data with you, like in terms of, it would be really interesting to see once they get that fossil fuel certification, if that has an impact on the number of customers that they have.
That they receive. Yeah, we're still very early days. It's something we're really interested in doing. We've discussed in the past with banks sharing data with us around new account openings that we managed to generate. And there is definitely a willingness there, but it's just a little bit, it's always proven a little bit resource intensive in terms of sort of getting in touch with their web. They don't always have a website division necessarily and someone to look at their analytics and that kind of thing. So we require them to do a lot of measurement themselves before they can pass that information to us. But yeah, as we go forward, that's absolutely something we want to track. And we have systems in place to be able to track clicks for example, from our website to their website. So we can look at that going
Okay.
forward and say, okay, we know that Ando received, X hundred visits this month. Let's go back to them and say how many of them actually opened accounts.
Mhm.
So it's on the roadmap. I just think we need to kind of build this out a
Yeah.
little bit first and prove the concept. Yeah.
Okay.
So over to the benefits for the banks and the credit unions. It allows them to explore values-based marketing and the positive publicity that comes with it. So one example recently was Beneficial State, who put out this blog article, Why We've Pledged to Stay Fossil Fuel Free, which we thought was nice. And then Ando as well, a very close partner. They're sort of touting their fossil-free status here on the homepage, which we really like as well. So, I mean, it's an obvious thing to do for banks who are already marketing themselves as sustainable, as that's their kind of differentiator. The challenge we're going to face is persuading banks of the advantages of doing that if they're not already doing it, without necessarily, wholesale transformation into a sustainable bank. This is still a new segment that you can and you would be encouraged to explore, because more and more people are starting to care about this stuff. So, so that kind of leads into the second point, which was leading to new customer segment opportunities. Similarly, new employee opportunities. There's more graduates, millennials, Gen Z, etc. Are obviously becoming increasingly climate conscious. They're going to be looking for employment opportunities with organizations that share those values with them. And then there's the aspect that these organizations can just not do anything other than sign up. And as long as they're listed on our website, as long as we succeed in building the alliance, getting those positive mentions in the press, then they're going to receive, a lot of free publicity from us, from people just visiting the website and finding out about their existence, so to speak. So, this is our really these are our selling points, and this is what we need to use. These are sort of persuasion tools, I suppose, with these guys, because they're obviously going to be quite busy and they're going to want to know what it's going to cost them and what the benefits are, and we just need to impress upon them that these benefits do outweigh the very, very low costs in their example. So so now over to the second item, which was the process of becoming a member of the Alliance. So at the moment, it starts with an initial call, just to get to know them a little bit better and find out exactly, satisfy ourselves that they are indeed fossil fuel free. It can be a fairly gray area, because, some banks may be fossil free themselves, but they might have a parent bank that isn't, or another bank that has an equity stake that isn't, or they may keep customer deposits with a partner bank that isn't. So these are some of the issues that we're actually working through at the moment, and our ideal candidate is one that has, they retain customer deposits, they're self-owned, and it's a very clear-cut kind of process. But the purpose of that call is to try to establish that and make a sort of judgment call ourselves, whether there's something that we would be happy to accept into the Alliance or not. And then on that call, we would ask if they could send us any public-facing information they have about their fossil-free status. If they don't, that's fine. It's not a deal breaker, but that obviously helps to kind of seal the deal, as it were. And then lastly, if we were happy with all the above, we will send them this application document, which is absolutely going to be made more robust. It covers the most important issues, where they're sort of confirming here that their organization plays no part in lending or underwriting to fossil fuel industries. And we ask that the CEO be the one to sign this, and then we keep this, in our records. So that is the current process. As I said, it's very straightforward, and I think it's worth making them aware of that. And again, the fact that it's free to join. There's really very little on their part for them to do. So I think the main objections, if any, that come up will be from a sort of marketing philosophical standpoint, like, do we want to be putting this out there, that sort of thing. And that's where our salesmanship will have to come in. Okay, so any questions so far on any of that? Or pretty
I don't know if it's a question about this. It's kind of something that's been in my mind for a little while as I started to learn about ESGs, which, are investment instruments that involve environmental sustainability and governance values. You're familiar with that?
Of course, I was at the webinar you invited me to, Judy.
Exactly. I think when I had been speaking to Alex Conan, the STMP National, it seems that there are some ESG parameters, or that ESG is like larger than investment instruments. It's kind of a values parameter for institutions as well. Like banks claim to have ESG values. Is this something you're familiar with?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, go ahead.
I just wonder if that is a lever that could be used in order to, because obviously if you have a bank like Chase that has these ESG claims, but they're lending to fossil fuel and probably expanding their fossil fuel investments, they're not living up to those standards. We're probably not going to move Chase, but if it's becoming part of banking culture to have presumably these values of governance, sustainability, and there's another one that I keep always forgetting.
Environmental, social, and governance.
Environmental, social, and governance, thank you. Then can that be a lever that can be part of this packaging ask to say, if you want to live up to the values in your own ESG statements or your own ESG department, this is a way to clarify to your customer base that you actually are, living your values. If they have such a claim already, in their materials,
yeah,
I just wonder if that's a lever point.
Yeah, I think it is. And I think what it makes me think is, so we need to, again, with any sales process, you need to qualify the leads, right? There are 5,000 banks, possibly, and credit unions in the US. We know that we're never going to get 5,000 to join, right? Because some of them, JP Morgan is never joining our alliance, for better or worse, right? So then what qualifies somebody as being someone that's worth our time to approach, and touting ESG credentials, for example, is a perfect example of something that might, send us a signal that this is actually a good organization for us to get in touch with.
Right.
Similarly, we're about to get into the outreach section, which is the last section. We have an initial outreach list of 240 banks. I think we have a similar number of credit unions, but right now we're just sticking to banks because we know they're going to be a little bit tougher, and we want to make this tough to actually see where we can get to. And all of those banks appeared. The way we got them was from Green America. So they have a Get a Better Bank section, and they have this big map which you can go on their website and check out all across the US. So we're basically piggybacking off the work that they've done, because all of those banks in this list meet one of these criteria. They're federally certified by the CDFI, certified by Green America's Green Business Network, membership inclusive, membership of Global Alliance on Banking on Values, etc. So all of these are qualifiers, just like ESG, right? And that's why they're on this list. We want to make it hard on ourselves, but not too hard, right? So when you're in discussions with the CEO or the director of impact, whatever it may be, this is worth mentioning. If they start giving us resistance, which I'm sure some of them will, you can say, well, that's great, but we know, the way we found you was on Green America because we know you are either, part of their Green Business Network or one of these other great credentials. So we know this stuff matters to you. And that's kind of our foot in the door, right? And that's when we can say, well, here is the next step you can take in that direction to further solidify your green credentials, etc. And so once we've exhausted this list and got as many of them signed up as possible, then there are a lot of ESG databases and things like that that we could also make use of to further qualify, the next cohort, if you will.
You feel like this is a more lower fruit on the tree, so to speak. These people should be the most interested.
I think so. I think so. I don't know the full. I know there's I don't know the full spectrum of kind of ESG databases or how we would get
I will try to learn more about
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
From the STMP National, because she said she could connect me with someone. The woman who works closely with Alex, I'm forgetting her name now, but she never did. They're not great at follow through sometimes. I think they're just overloaded. But I'll get back to her and see if she can give me more information about that.
Absolutely, yeah. If we can get better qualification criteria than these, then I'm all for it. This just seemed like a decent place to start, because Green America have a very similar mission to what we're trying to do, and they've already done a lot of this vetting. So rather than just throwing a dart at the wall and just picking 200 random banks across the US, this seemed like a much better way to go about it. And the stuff you're talking about, I think, is very much in that vein as well. So great.
Zach,
Yes.
I apologize. I'm going to have to call back in
Okay.
because my computer's about to die and my charger's not working for some reason. So
Okay.
my phone. I'll be right back. Okay.
Yeah, I can stop the recording and I'll wait. We can pause. Actually, I don't know if I can, but that's fine. I can edit it afterwards. So we'll wait for you.
Okay.
No worries. Okay.
I've wondered for a long time, Zach, about, and this might just be old-fashioned thinking because I'm an old person, but about actually getting onto college campuses and talking to students about this directly. Do you think that's a good idea? Do you think it could all be done online?
Hi again. That was very quick.
Okay.
Judy was just asking about getting onto college campuses. I think absolutely it will help. I think we've spoken about this before. We've made a few initial conversations with various environmentally focused student organizations, and they just didn't go anywhere because I think they're often quite overloaded as well. Like you were saying, I think New Mexico really loved what we were doing, and they kept posting about us on their Instagram, and they actually did some tabling at Freshers Week and things like that. So yeah, it's great. It's all really good, but in terms of the actual growth of the alliance, I mean, that's not going to help us there. But just in terms of general awareness raising, yeah, as we've said, like that generation is the one that's going to be most affected by climate change, and is therefore most motivated to do something about it. Yeah.
I will contact, the thing I invited you to was really organized by a Barnard student. She did all the legwork. So I'm going to contact her and see if she might facilitate some connection with a climate group at Barnard Columbia so that we could maybe plan to do something, maybe in the fall as a freshman come in or something like that. Because I really feel like getting there with a table and like talking to college students about this makes a lot of sense to me.
Absolutely. Yeah, we still have this conversation going with somebody. This came to us via Ando, but they're called Reverb, and they've been trying to green the music industry since 2004. Cool. And we're already on their website in the climate action section, but they want us to have us on iPads or Bank Green on iPads during the festivals, because they have these little action villages where you can go. So all of the young festival goers can check out their bank before they start dancing or whatever they do. So we'll see where we get to with that. Yeah, that would be really, really cool. Okay, so on to the final section for today, the outreach process. This is where the rubber meets the road. I've created a resources document that I will send to you. So don't worry too much about taking copious notes right now, because everything will be detailed within this that you'll have access to. It's not fully complete, but it's almost complete. I need to fill out a couple more sections here. But this is kind of a foundational document that you can use. And if there's things missing or things you think should change, you have the ability to comment on it as well. So you can just click comment and then you go into Notion and we can kind of have a discussion around it as well. So the main tool we're going to be using is called Pipedrive. Pipedrive is a CRM that I've used in the past. It's the best, one of the best, if not the best, I think, in terms of how feature rich it is, and it lets you do all kinds of things.
What's a CRM, Zach?
It's a customer relationship management tool. So it's what businesses use to manage the inflow of customers and their own outreach if they're trying to get new customers. So it's just it's basically just an organizing tool for all of the outreach and prospecting that you're doing in a particular domain. So most often it's used by commercial sales teams, But as I keep likening this to a sales exercise that we're doing ourselves, I think it's going to be very handy to us to be using it. Where to begin? So Pipedrive is allows you to track your pipeline, which is, or otherwise known as a funnel, right? So you say you have 100, say we have this list of 240 Green America banks to reach out to. We're trying to get them from one stage of this pipeline to the next. And we know that only a relatively small percentage is going to get to the actual end. And those are the deals that we've won. Those are the new members of the Fossil Free Alliance, we could say. So there's going to be a bit of a learning curve with Pipedrive. It is one of the more simple CRMs, but if you haven't used one before, then absolutely, and even if you have, there's still going to be a lot to learn. So I'm going to try it. I've already been trying, and I'll try further in this document to just stick to what we need to know for our functions. And once so here you can see contact. So this is the initial list of banks. It's 208 right now. I think that's because there's a glitch. It should be 240. And what we can do is we can chunk it out and say each of us, between the four of us, can try and get 50 or 60, right? So we'll each have 50 or 60 of these to go after. And then we can see, by the end of May, if we're going to try and use May as a trial month, or if it takes a bit longer, then that's fine, how many each of us managed to get, right? And we're not competing with each other, but it would, and this is it. This is the proof of concept. And if we can get, a decent chunk, then we know that this works, and we know that we should keep pursuing this. And it allows us then to potentially go to funders and say, look, because I've had a lot of interest already in my conversations over the last sort of 6 months. There's a lot of consumer products or databases that want to have a filtering mechanism where people can filter for banks that are fossil free, right? But at the moment, these banks aren't exposing that information. Well, that's what we can help them to do by joining the Alliance. And then we can also kick up those conversations again with those different organizations. So the idea is that, you will each have your own login to Pipedrive, in which you will see all of your deals and everyone else's. We can change it so it's just yours if that makes it easier for you. And then a deal is a qualified bank, right? So we know that this bank is on the Green America list, so they're good to go, and we're ready to approach them, right? And so you can go into click on any of these, and you see all of the information that you might need about that particular deal. There's more to be added. We're adding sort of phone numbers, addresses, so you can see what state they're in, et cetera, et cetera. But for now, we just have the name of the organization, the website URL, the source where it came from. So we put Green America here. And then the main person who we're going to reach out to initially, right? So of all this list of 240 banks, we've gone through them all, and we've painstakingly tried to gather as much information about who to contact. So my suggestion is that we go straight to the CEO to begin with an email, because they are the head decision maker. And if they're not going to be taking it on themselves, they can just forward it to the most appropriate person. The reason for that is that some of these banks do have heads of sustainability or heads of CSR or what, but many of them don't. And the next best person to speak to will probably be head of marketing and communications, right? Because this is a marketing issue for them. But it's not always that easy to find that person's information. And I'll probably do a separate video on how we've gone about getting the emails of these people. But it's usually an easier task to find the CEO's information. So both because they're the head decision maker and it's easier to find their info, they're usually the first one who's up, right? So you can see it says CEO, Ken Villabro, and then that's their email address, right? So I'm going to back up for 1 second. So yeah, the main sections of Pipedrive are all here on the left. So if you ever get lost and you're trying to find your way again, you can just click here on deals, for example, and that'll bring you back to your deals. There are different ways to view your deals. You can have a list view or a pipeline view, etc. If you want to bulk edit them, you can do that from the list view. It's quite easy. But yeah, so the first step when you come to sit down and ready to attack this is to organize activities and deals, I've put, right? So again, just as a reminder, this is all going to be here in the outreach process section. And by organizing activities, what I mean is, here's the activities section. And activities are a way both for you to kind of schedule your own tasks that you need to do, and for all of us to kind of see the progress we're making on various fronts, right? So each deal should have an activity associated with it. Typically, it's going to start with an email. So you can go in here and you can add activities. I'm going to try and make it so that they're automatically added and you just have to adjust the date. But if you were adding a new one, you would just click add activity. You put the information in here, you put the name of the deal, and so on. But you can do this in bulk. I haven't done that yet, so I might do another video or put into the document exactly how you would do it, just to make it quicker on you, right? So you could click here probably, select them all, and you could put due date. You know, you could put whatever due date you want for all of them, whatever. Yeah, so I think that would be the main thing you'd want to edit is the due date. You can also sync it. You see up here, it says connect your calendar. So you can sync this to your Google Calendar, your Outlook, and that will simplify things. And then you'll see, okay, this is when I'm going to do X, Y, and Z activity. And then the activity is complete. And then if you haven't closed the deal yet, then there'll probably be a follow-up activity. So then you'll be like, okay, how did this call end? What did I say I would do? I would send another email, I would call, etc. And then you can program in another activity. And that you can do from within the deals page, right? So you come back to the deals. So say I'm working on Woodlands National Bank, as an example. Whenever you're working on a particular bank, it's good to have this deals page open because that's where you can see all the information. And so you can see here on the activities tab, it's very similar to what we were just looking at. You can program in what the next thing is that needs to be done to carry that deal forward to completion. That's basically an activity. It's just a waypoint along the way to bring that either to a lost deal if we didn't get it, or to a new member of the alliance. Okay, so the activity that I'm suggesting that we start off with is, oh, one other thing, sorry, here are the different tabs relating to dimensions of this deal. And it's great to take notes. So they have this really handy feature here where you can just type in the notes, click save, and then we can all see at a glance, including yourself when you come back to it, what was the last thing that happened with this deal? Like what do we need to do next, kind of thing. The first thing, as I said, organize your activities for whenever you're ready to do them. And then when that time comes, you can jump in and you can begin going after it. So email. My suggestion for now is that we send an email to the CEO, and I have a template, so you don't need to worry about what to come up with. And on the same day, we call. It doesn't have to be, it could be a day or two later, but it's good to do it all in once. We call the organization and try to get, if we can, onto the phone with the decision maker, with the CEO. It may be tricky because at the moment, most of the phone numbers we're going to get are going to be customer service numbers, right? Wherever possible, we're going to have corporate numbers. But, you know, it may be tricky with a customer service person to be able to, you know, for them to give you the number of the CEO and stuff. So this is something we're going to need to work on as a team and figure out, like, what is the most efficient way to be able to get the CEO on the phone. And if it's not going to be them, then let's ask them, you know, do you have a head of CSR? Do you have a head of sustainability? Okay, who's your director of communications? You know, to try to get the phone number to speak to somebody, right? Because cold calling can be a bit scary, but hopefully we're all motivated enough to push through that. And, you know, my proposal is that we kind of meet once a week or bi-weekly to go over this all together and help each other to kind of improve. But I think the most effective way we were going to have of bringing these banks into the alliance is by getting on a call with these people, right? So the email is basically a foot in the door to try to generate a call from that person. So either it's going to work by us calling ourselves. As I said, that's probably going to be challenging initially. Hopefully, you know, we're going to get better and better at it. But if not, we have this backup, which is the email, which is explaining who we are, what we're doing, and trying to get a call going that way. So here is the amazing thing about Pipedrive, you can do everything from within Pipedrive. So I have already created Bank Green emails for all of you. So there's a Judy at Bank Green, there's a Denise at Bank Green, a Brian at Bank Green. And what you can do is you can connect these emails to Pipedrive. So from within here, you can send an email as Judy at Bank Green and Denise at Bank Green, right? So to do that, you would go here to the email tab. Mm-hmm. It's already populated with the contact for this deal because it knows who they are. And here you can choose templates. And so you would just choose initial email. And there, the email already pops up for you. right? Hi,
Yeah.
Ken, I'm Zach Gottlieb from Bank Green. Maybe just change it. I could change it to Zach. But if you, when you're in your Pipedrive account, it'll obviously have your name, right? It'll be relative. A nonprofit campaign group working to create a more sustainable fossil fuel-free banking industry in the face of climate change. I'm reaching out because I know that, and then it just populates the name of the organization. Does not provide financing to fossil fuel projects or companies, and so I wanted to invite you to learn more about our Fossil Free Alliance. As a certified member of our free-to-join coalition of sustainable banks and credit unions, you'll be able to attract more customers and talented team members, enjoy public relations and branding benefits, and meet other leaders within the sustainable banking movement. My question is, are you interested to know more about our growing alliance? If so, just reply yes to this email, and I'll be glad to send more information, right? So we're making as low a commitment on their part as possible. When I used to do this for my business, I found it quite effective because people don't want to think too much, and if they just have to reply yes, and then they start to feel committed because now they're in a conversation with you. so then you send them another follow-up with more information, and that's where you try to go for the ask, which is the call, right? It also has a way of following up automatically. I haven't figured that out yet on Pipedrive. So if they don't respond, then once we figure this out, then it should automatically 3 or 4 days later send them another one just to kind of ping them again, because obviously they're the CEO, they're probably extremely busy, etc. And you can even propose times. I haven't worked with this yet either, because a lot has changed since I was using this for my business, but you're very welcome to explore these options. Alternatively, I use a tool which is quite handy called Calendly, which is free to use, where you can sign up and it connects to your calendar. So if you're trying to get a call going with them, you could just send them a link to this and then they could book that in. So this is all the sort of more detailed stuff that we can get into once we've got going. But I just wanted to give you kind of the general overview.
It seems very well organized and very scaffolded up for us to be easy.
Yes.
I know for myself, like I use software system like for my business as a therapist, but I'm not good at learning them. Like I haven't, it's not been like the norm of most of my life. So it takes me a while to learn it, and I'll forget a lot of what you've just said about what exactly we're supposed to do. So I know that about myself.
I'm your tech support, Judy. Not only that, but they also have a chat function where you can go here and you can supposedly ask, it says chat with us, and ask questions directly to their tech support. So you can just send them a message through this if you just click on the help thing at the top, and our usual reply time is a few minutes. So if you're lucky, it'll be a few minutes. It is a global platform, so they should have customer support around the clock. Most you'd have to wait is 24 hours, I think, to hear something back. So you can always try that, or you can always ask me. And in that regard, there's here on the back on the resources document, I've got this team communication section. So what I'm proposing as a sort of neutral third-party platform is that we use Slack. Have either of you heard of Slack? We used it before?
Yes, I have used Slack in the past for maybe for XR, for Extinction Rebellion.
Yeah, they started off using that, and then they realized that they had a backdoor to the government and all this other stuff, and it was actually pretty risky for them to use as a climate movement. So they built their own one on an open source version of Slack called Mattermost, I think, which became the norm. But we don't need to worry too much about that. So here is the Bank Green Slack channel. You're invited to it via this link. I think if you haven't downloaded Slack already, it'll invite you to download Slack first. And then that will allow us you'll be very welcome to our other channels as well. Here we have brand mentions where we can see where we've been linked to, or people on Twitter who are talking about us, which is always exciting. And we will have a specific channel that I just haven't created yet, that's going to be called, Fossil Free Alliance, where all 4 of us can chat in real time about anything that comes up.
So we can ask each other.
Exactly. And I could do quick video, screen shares or video tutorials or anything to make your life easier. So that's the team communication. I've basically outlined the outreach process. So as I said, the goal is to get either the CEO, if there's a CSR person, if not marketing communications, onto a phone call and then pitch them, right? This is the exciting bit. And so here I've written a proposed pitch that I'm sure can be improved, but this was my first attempt. Again, some of it based on my previous experience doing this kind of stuff. And, you know, it's a sort of follow along thing. If they answer yes, they want to hear more. Here you talk about the benefits. If they answer no and they have an objection, you know, here are some potential objections, and we definitely want to be adding to this list, because the more objections we hear, the more we can discuss amongst ourselves how to counter them and what the best response is. And it's not always going to work, but sometimes it will. But at least if we have it documented, we know this is the best practice, right? So, you know, we're not a sustainable or green bank. We're not positioned to answer questions about our green credentials. We're too busy for something like this at the moment. Those, to me, were some of the most obvious things that we might start to hear from these people. And so I've written what I see as potentially viable responses to that. And then the idea is you give the response, and then you try and redirect them back into the pitch, talking about how great we are and how great the benefits to them are, et cetera, et cetera. So
I'm learning a lot about sales. I might just switch careers.
Yeah, there you go. You never know. Could be a stepping stone. So this is really the you know, what we're trying to get towards. Get somebody on the phone, hear us out, start to be receptive to this, and when they are, that's when the application process will kick in, and we'll try to get another call agreed where they would have whichever relevant person it would be to come on the call and discuss some of those other issues, and I would be very happy to be on that call as well, to sort of talk about the specifics of their fossil-free status, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. But that is one step further along. This is the initial one, which is actually getting them to hear about the Fossil Free Alliance from us. Okay. So that's detailed there. There'll be more screenshots and videos added to this, but the beginning is all done, and there's a section here on how to connect your email to Pipedrive, and also, you know, shows you how to log into your email, your Bank Green email as well. And I think that's about it. And then, you know, as I said, you go back into the deal section, you would drag this all the way along, and then when a deal is won or lost, you drag it here in the bottom of the screen. You see there's the lost and there's the won. Mm-hmm. And if you need to delete it, there's that as well. And then that is recorded by the system as a won deal or a lost deal. And then we have this whole kind of insights section, if we ever decide to use it, that can show us, you know, what percentage of deals we managed to win over what time frame, and where most of the drop off was. So we can start to kind of do some analysis there and be like, okay, well, we're not even getting them to that phone call. So we need to take a step back and be like, what are we doing wrong at this stage to get to the next stage, et cetera, et cetera. So that's another kind of handy feature. One other thing to mention, I think, is that when you are going through these deals, they are, as I said, they're not fully complete. We didn't manage to find CEO information and or marketing person information for every single bank. So in some cases, that's as far as we could get, and we just need to try our luck on the phone and just see if we can get through to anyone. In other cases, maybe there's a bit more that could be done. We could try Googling for that information. The part that I just wanted to mention is, at any one time, a deal can only have one contact associated with it, right? So this is Asif. Is his first name. There should be a full name there. I'm not sure why there isn't. And so at this point, I think we're just going to try, you just try to contact the CEO, which is what it's going to be in most cases, right? There should be, here you see the job role, right? So if it's not the CEO, that'll be specified. But if that doesn't work and we don't get anywhere with them, in some cases, we did manage to find the marketing person, the CR person, whoever it was. I'm still figuring out how to display that within Pipedrive. At the moment, it's this person, so Lisa Diaz. Somehow, for some reason, the import included the second person's email. But so what if you don't hear back from Asif after a few days, then we have one other person we can try, right? Because again, a big initial challenge for us is to actually get anybody on the phone to talk about this stuff, right? Yeah, just because of the way banks are set up, they're mostly customer facing. It's a little bit more of a challenge to get into their kind of corporate innards, I guess, or inner workings. So, in this case, we've got the person's email. We know their name is Lisa Diaz. We don't know who they are because, as I said, they can only have one job role. So what I'm going to be trying to do is figure out, there's this participant section. So you can only have one actual contact person, but then you can have other participants added. So I'm trying to see if I can get the second person's information added here, so that if and when you don't hear back from good old Asif, maybe a week later, you'd be like, okay, didn't hear back from him, couldn't get anyone on the phone. Let me try Lisa Diaz and see where I get to with her, kind of thing. And if we don't get anywhere with the second person, then we've kind of exhausted all options. And in some cases, there won't even be an Asif. There will be no one here. It means we tried, but we just didn't get anywhere with trying to find someone. And then we just have to do the best with what we've got. Right. And as with all these other sections, so we've got the deal section here, we've got activities, and then you have your whole synced email inbox here as well. So this is synced my whole Bank Green email inbox. That's why I've got all these STMP things and other things. If you're just using your email that I've created for you for Pipedrive, then you'll only have emails here that are relevant to relevant to this outreach. So you might prefer to just work from your inbox here. And the neat thing is that any email addresses from this list that are associated with a deal will also, those emails will still pop up within that deal view we were just looking at. So it's all kind of merged, which is handy.
Question, Zach. So the simplest, easiest way to do it, we don't have to link our email, our general email with this email. We can just have an email that exists in Pipedrive.
So that's a really good question. So you don't have to, but what I'm strongly suggesting is linking your Bank Green email to Pipedrive, right? So this is all of your Bank Green work is combined, and you should never have to actually log into your Bank Green email because it's all showing up here, right? You can
okay, so my general email, like where you email me, my personal email that I also use for my business, that's not going to be linked. But I'm going to have a Bank Green email that will be linked.
So that's a great question. So that's something I address in the outreach process section here in the email section. What I wrote, while of course there is no obligation, it would be extremely helpful if you were to set up forwarding from your Bank Green email to your regular email so that we might try to respond to any incoming emails in a timely way and be more likely to get a new Alliance member signed up. So it kind of depends, and this was the final slide in the thing, what your availability is for this, how much time you might have to respond the same day to somebody, for example. To my mind, this would be the quickest way of just knowing when a CEO or whoever got back to us, is just to set up a forward from your bank email to your regular one. But if, for example, you do have the time to check in to your Pipedrive inbox, once a day, or for example, at the beginning of the day or at the end of the day, then that's absolutely fine as well. And then obviously there'd be no need for a forward because you would see anything showing up here already. But that's the only thing. I think if we leave people hanging, they do actually respond to us positively, and we leave them like a day or two or three, then we start to lose, the lead starts to cool down quite quickly, I think, as we say. Sure. So yes, that was it. So organize activities, email setup, send email and call, ideally on the same day, doesn't have to be, requesting to speak with person responsible for bank's social impact. So that's something you can ask to the customer service person. Might be easier to get that person's phone number than the CEO, for example, because they don't want to get in trouble in case we're a spam call, right? So that's something I actually will probably add to this file as well, is like a little add here somewhere, is a little mini pitch to the customer service person or whoever else it might be, to sort of like, and that's something that we can also improve to try to, the gatekeeper, we could say, to try to get to the actual people that we need to speak to. And as we gather these phone numbers, we're also going to collect data on what kind of phone numbers are available to us, and maybe try and have that displayed within the deal view so you can actually see which phone you're calling, so you're not just calling blind. You can always check the website yourself, right? So the website's always here for you to explore and take a look at the contact us page. But we might have a custom field next to phone number that just says like, who is this? Because in some cases they have like an investor relations line, which might not be a bad idea to try them, because they usually have a direct line to the executives, etc. So we could call them and, maybe that would spark another interesting conversation about their investments, and so on. So where was I going with that? I think I can't remember now, but I was going to potentially put in another mini pitch to help us to try to get through the gatekeeper, whoever that might be, to get to those numbers. So that was it. My only questions, so now we have a time for any questions that have come up. Questions to you guys were just around your availability for this. I'm obviously incredibly grateful to both of you for being willing to help for this. I think the more of us we can get onto this, the more we're going to find out sooner than later if we've got something here that can really go forward. And so, you know, whatever you're willing to spare is gravy, as we say in England.
We say that here too.
So that was my question to you, and then feel free to answer that and or any other questions or feedback you have on everything I went over as well.
I just think this is an extraordinarily organized presentation, and you know, your background is actually being able to create a business in the modern world is clear. So if I can get facility in using this system, I think it's just a very efficient way to actually move forward. Availability, you know, I think I would have, you know, twice a week, I could have 45 minutes or an hour to put into this, and I could, you know, check emails on the other days. I don't think that's unreasonable at all. I think it just feels like such an organized plan that it feels motivating to me. Yes. You know, yeah, because so much of what we do, like with STMP or at 350, it just feels like kind of just, you know, you're kind of throwing things out there hoping that something will stick. This has a very clear focus, and I like that.
Yeah, I think from trying to grow my business, the only thing I learned is just you and the phone list kind of thing, is that you have to measure it, right? You're never gonna push through unless you're figuring out, like, okay, they rejected me. Why did they reject me? You know, that's gonna happen. We're gonna get rejected by a lot. Like, we need to toughen up, right? That's the only way to do it. Yeah, and once you accept that, you become more zen about it, and you can start to think, okay, well, what are the sticking points? Where did we go wrong? Where could we go better? And it may be eventually that we'll be like, okay, this is just not something that we can get these general banks to be on board with. Like, we know we can get the sustainable banks on board. They're writing blogs about us. They're putting us on their homepage. That's easy. That's the low-hanging fruit. The challenge and the interesting thing to me is, like, can we get these other banks who are just not financing fossil fuels by default to join, and to thereby signal to a big group of potential customers that they are on the right track, I think. So I think we'll find that out.
I agree with Judy. I think, you know, one, you have done a fantastic job of organizing this. So thank you, because that makes it looks like it's going to be really easy for us to just dive in and get started and really start working on some of the areas that will be most impactful. So thank you for that, all of the upfront work. I know that, I mean, I can tell from everything you've done, it's been a lot of work. As far as my availability, I think I'll probably have between like 3 and 5 hours a week to do the initial outreach. And then, you know, as Judy mentioned too, I'll try to keep on top of those emails and make sure that I'm responding in a timely manner. One thing that question I have is, so one, as somebody who has worked in the customer experience field and thought a lot about like experience management, I love how much thought you put into that initial email and making it easy for them to respond. I agree, that's huge. What do you think about, well, okay, if it fits with the process, I guess you should say, what do you think about also just going ahead and including a link to Calendly, or, you know, whatever we're using to go ahead and schedule that initial call?
Yeah, it's funny, when I was writing that email, I had the exact same thought. And this is the kind of thing where, you know, huge companies like Salesforce or whoever can kind of look at like thousands of emails and exactly identify like which had the optimal conversion rate or return rate kind of thing. Whereas if it's smaller and we don't have huge, you know, mounds of data to look at, it's more just our instinct, right? Like, you know, we know from human behavior that it's easier to just get a very small commitment from someone initially. It's called the foot in the door technique, and then kind of build on that. But yeah, I'm all for, if they're ready to jump, then let's give them that option as well. It's the same thing. There's a change we need to make on the Bank Green website, because at the moment we're asking people to pledge, right? But a lot of people that come on don't need to pledge. They're ready to switch today. And we don't actually have anywhere signposted yet. They can be like, oh, you want to switch today? Go straight to our sustainable bank section, right? So it's exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
And I'm 100% with you. So yeah, you can edit that. That template is shared between all of us. So maybe
Okay.
I'll try and make an edit. We can all maybe agree if we're going to use Calendly. If we're not using it already, I think it works very nicely. Google's actually integrating Calendly functionality into their own calendar in the coming weeks. So, but for now, Calendly works really well for me. Maybe if we all like it, then we can. I'll just put a placeholder there, so you can just make sure you pop your own Calendly link in there as well.
Okay.
So, yeah.
The other thought I had, this is a little further along, but when we get someone to sign up, what about asking them for a recommendation or contact of someone else who they think might be interested in joining? Because I know, especially, probably not just the smaller banks, throughout the banking industry, they're all connected, and those regional banks, especially where they're not they oftentimes will know folks in other regions that might share their interest. So
brilliant. Yes. And that's also something that I did back in my sales that I'd forgotten about. Yeah. And you in those cases, I'd offer a discount. I'd be like, hey, how about we take 50% off your first month's fee if you can tell me 3 people in your circle who would be excellent candidates. So in this case, we don't quite have that leverage. We just have to ask we'll pay you if you give us recommendations.
The last thought I had is on the objections, and I didn't have a chance to read through all of those, but one of this is not necessarily an objection, but one of the things that I think may be relevant that plays more of the fear card, which I know is, can be a little bit tricky, is the eventually everybody's going to go here reasoning, that you don't want to be the last one to be fossil free certified. We are moving, as on a global scale, moving away from fossil fuels. So
the fact is, we're heading towards a future in which we need all banks to not be giving any money to the fossil fuel industry.
Okay.
By joining the alliance, which requires very little investment on your part, there's an opportunity here for you to get ahead of the curve and show that your values as an organization are aligned with those of your customer base. So
yeah,
you could have written that yourself, I think, based on what you just said. Yeah.
So, I think I don't remember if I mentioned this to you before, Zach, but when I worked in the brokerage industry, I worked for an online brokerage, and we had essentially one revenue channel that was our $7 per trade. And we identified a few years before it happened, but when it was too late, that it was a race to the bottom. Eventually, online trading was going to be free, and we didn't have other revenue streams to fill in there. So this isn't exactly the same thing, but I kind of relate it to that same issue that we faced, where we saw what was coming, but it was too late for us. We couldn't do anything about it at that point. They ended up getting bought out, which worked out fine. But
okay. Yeah, go ahead, Judy.
Well, just the idea of, I wish it was the case that fossil fuel assets were not going to be worth very much in the near future. But I think in the near future, they actually will be worth a lot. It's the medium term that they're going to, because they're worth a tremendous amount now, because we have this, one of the major oil producers becoming untenable for many countries, right? So whoever's left is going to get even richer. I don't know how relevant that is to what we're trying to do, but I think that that's true. It's unfortunate, very unfortunate. I think what's happening in the world now also will push people to move towards green energy, but in the short term, there's going to be a rise in price for fossil fuel. Am I wrong?
I think that's probably accurate. But Denise, just so I understand your question, is your concern that we need to sort of be viable from a revenue generation standpoint, or?
No. I was just making a comment and kind of relating it to past experience about how, mainly, I think that the point you have in there is good, that we are moving in this direction, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
And this is something that you need to be thinking about from a strategic standpoint. How are you putting yourself out there
Right.
in terms of sustainability. Yeah.
Yeah, because eventually, if it is going to be the norm, which we hope will be the world that we'll be alive to experience, it's not going to be a differentiator anymore. But this is right
Exactly.
at the crux between these two different worlds, where people can actually be like, hey, we're leading the way, you should follow us, kind of thing. So this promise.
I think it's about the moral values of the customer base, right? That we're really trying to hook them into. And I'm wondering if the campaign that STMP is running right now, where they're trying to, rather than pushing people to switch banks, they're doing a campaign in which customers sign a letter to the bank, the managers of their dirty bank, saying, we want to meet with you because we want to tell you to stop fossil fuel expansion. They're trying to gather thousands of signatures. That's something that I do on the weekends, is go to the farmer's market to get people to sign these letters. Right. I just wonder if it would be helpful if we have a count of how many signatures they've presently gathered, because that is a statement of, we want you out of fossil fuel. Because
do you mean from the Customers for Climate Justice campaign?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Those are all people who are making a statement to the dirty banks that we hate what you're doing with our money.
Yes, I think that's brilliant. I think and this is something, again, that we need to kind of add these ideas to this document and find the right place for them. But I think every point in our favor that we can muster, we need to do. One of them is by playing the guilt card a little bit. So we found you on the Green America website, so we know you care about this stuff. Another one is like, if you don't think that customers care about this, then take a look at this letter, right? We just had 10,000 bank customers write to their dirty banks to say X, Y, and Z. So that's, because they may start, casting doubt on this notion that people are starting to care more about it, right? So that's,
I think it's people caring more than stranded assets, because while those assets may be stranded someday, they're not stranded now.
Right.
I wish they were.
Exactly. And we can even mention Bank Green, if they ask about that, we're getting, thousands of people pledging to switch every day. There's a ton of positive feedback about it. So this is just another sort of signal, another, stone in the road that shows people that we actually, this is something that people want more and more.
Right. And you have an alliance, you have a connection with STMP, right?
Yeah, we're one of the coalition partners.
Yeah. So they could give us those numbers to date, and we could be very,
yes,
accurate. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. Alec would probably do that. I missed the last coalition call, which I feel bad about. They've also given us funding. So that it's that money that's going towards building out this new section of the website that's going to house all of these Fossil Free Alliance members.
One last question for you, Zach, because I have this connection at Barnard that I developed. I mean, I'm an alum, but I haven't been very connected, but now I feel a little more connected because of this event. Would you want student interns involved in this who are interested in environmental issues?
So
not at this time?
Yeah, my feeling is that between the four of us, we have a very clear road ahead, right? We have about 50 or 60 banks, each of us, that should be interested in this kind of stuff. I see this as like a pilot project, right? Let's see where we can get to. As I say, ideally we can, at the end of April, so maybe we can try to get as much possible done in the next 4 weeks and see where we're at to a month from now. And then based on that, decide kind of where to go next collectively, right? Like maybe if we know this works, then we need all hands on deck. Anyone that we can bring in, and this is one of the reasons I'm creating these standard operating procedures, is the idea that we could just throw this at anybody and they could pick it up and start running with it.
Right.
And then it's just a question of speed, right? We know there's 5,000 banks, how many of them we can get, and we can tick them all off. And hopefully we'll at least get through a big chunk of that, and we'll know the ones that are never going to come on versus the ones that are, etc. And that's where the momentum will really start to pick up. So absolutely we could use more help, but I think at this point, between the four of us, it's quite manageable. I think with too many cooks at this early stage, it could get a little bit chaotic, we could say. But that's great to know that you have that connection and that we could maybe make use of it going forward. Yeah.
Sounds good. So what's the next?
Yes.
The next concrete step.
Next step is for me to send you everything. There's not a lot, but most of it you should be able to follow through here and get up to speed with, including it tells you your login into the private the email. So you will have to log into your private email account, which is the Bank Green account, to be clear, initially, because that's where you also receive an invite to Pipedrive. So there's an email waiting for you in there. You would click on that. You would sign up for a Pipedrive account with your Bank Green email. And then in this guide as well, it tells you how to connect that email to Pipedrive. So a lot of it right now is just getting that plumbing sorted out so that everything can run really smoothly when we start going on this. And then the next step is for us to start. And if you guys are able to start next week, that would be perfect. That coincides with the beginning of May. And then ideally we could meet maybe once a week at the end or the beginning, whatever worked best for you guys, to compare notes and, discuss any sticking points and improve and that kind of thing. So as I said, I've still got a few little details to iron out. I'm hoping that everything will be completely pristine by Monday, or maybe Tuesday at the latest. But in the meantime, I will send you today or maybe tomorrow morning this document where it's a little bit more fleshed out. There's also a section here with digital assets. So if you do need to send someone the slide deck that explains everything, there's this. Here is the application document. Here is the logo, so you can create your own email signature within Pipedrive, which there are instructions for how to do here. And it also made me think that in this email section here, you can see that there's also a documents section as well, so you can keep everything very neatly here that you might need to send them. Template. So I created a template, for example, for the application document, so you could just jump straight in here without having to go anywhere else to find it and just do everything. So those are the kind of little things that I'm trying to smooth out just to kind of make it as easy as possible. And then, yeah, we can just stay in touch via Slack as well next week and go like that. Yeah.
Sounds great. So I should have Slack. I should make sure I have a Slack account, which I don't know that I presently have. I should just download that. And then you will be sending, and then you'll be sending me something. I'll get an email from you that will start me out in this.
I'm just going to give you guys a link to this now. And I'm just going to be building it out more further in the next couple of days. That's probably the easiest. Although Zoom is really annoying me because I've been trying to figure out how to stop the screen share for the last 15 minutes, but I haven't been able to. It's super annoying. And unless I can do that, I can't access the chat, which means I can't send you this link, which is frustrating. There's just no button. It's crazy. I'm here.
I just access the chat. Oh, but you're screen sharing.
Because I'm screen sharing. All I can see is the screen and our faces.
I think it's usually on top that you can end share.
Yeah, but it's in this case it is. I know. I think if I hit escape, maybe. No, it's not even. Nah, it's really bad. I'm blaming Zoom. So I'll email you a link. I'll just email you.
So you'll email us a link. We'll go to Pipedrive, and I'll probably be sending you a lot of emails, Zach, because really I'm very slow at learning this stuff.
That's totally fine. That's totally fine. I would wait, if possible, just wait until tomorrow to check out the document in too much depth. It's mostly done, as I say, but there's parts of the outreach process that I was ironing out. But in terms of the top thing here, you can join Slack through that link immediately.
Okay.
And then I'll invite you to the Fossil Free channel, and then we can keep chatting in there.
So I should copy this link and join through this link.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. I'll send you this document and then you can jump in.
Okay. Sounds great. Okay, Zach, this is great.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting started.
Nice meeting you. I'm sorry, your name again is?
Denise.
Denise, nice meeting you.
And then
Judy.
Brian will be joining us on the next one as well. So before.
Okay.
Cool.
All right.
Okay. Thank you so much. Have a really good rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.